Patrik Laine has been one of the most talked about trade pieces this NHL offseason, and with him now exiting the NHLPA assistance program, he can officially be dealt. And since we heard that news, we've seen the rumor mill absolutely swirling, but recently we got word of 3 different teams that are the frontrunners right now for Laine in the end. So today on the Rumor Roundup, brought to you by BetUS, we're going to be talking about the Patrik Laine frontrunners, how much they make sense for a Laine trade, and what those Laine trades could potentially look like. So make sure you watch till the end as we go through all the rumors here today, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the offseason. Now, we talked about Patrik Laine a lot on this channel this offseason, but it's interesting to see, especially once he left the NHLPA assistance program, how the value has been circulating around the league, because it felt like Columbus originally was going to look for more NHL impact players, and now I think that's not really going to be the case. Now, Aaron Porcelain in The Athletic talked about Laine's value, saying that Waddell has said he'd like to make a hockey trade involving Laine. That is, he'd like to acquire a lineup player as part of the return package without having to retain a significant portion of Laine's salary. Although a deal is likely more difficult to swing this deep in the offseason, with many clubs already settled on their rosters. And that's really the rough thing here, because especially so late in the offseason, it's going to be a lot harder to move Laine in general, but especially if they're asking for a big-time NHL player back, which was already a question mark with Laine's so-so value, there was going to be some problems with that. And we've now heard, of course, that more likely it's going to be a deal mostly revolving picks and prospects. Now, that's not to say that I don't think any players could be a part of the deal, because I think it could be necessary for cap reasons. You see Laine's cap hit at $8.7 million, and that's something that is going to become a massive problem for any team looking to trade for him. This deep in the offseason, most teams have their rosters settled, and especially their cap structures settled, and to bring on a contract like that, most teams just can't at this stage. Now, in a different article talking about the Wild as a potential fit for Laine, they bring up Aaron Porcelain again, saying that Aaron Porcelain believes the team is looking for a lineup player. I don't think they expect a top 6 forward, but someone who can play nightly and make them more competitive. He also goes on to say that Waddell has said he wants to make a hockey trade, but I think most assume it's going to be taking money back, either in the form of retained salary or an undesirable player with a hefty contract. So it seems like there will be a player involved, but most likely somebody that Columbus won't want to keep in the future. But now we enter the Patrik Laine sweepstakes. We know what we could end up seeing in a Patrik Laine deal, but now we also know recently what teams will be involved, what teams have been searching for Laine services and trying to make a deal happen. Now, for the first team that I want to talk about here today, we have the Minnesota Wild, from a tweet from NHL Watcher, saying it is expected that Wild GM Bill Guerin will reach out to Laine at some point to discuss his interest in playing in Minnesota. We get a really good article here from TSN breaking down the situation, especially with the interest of the Wild, saying that as rumors continue to swirl on a possible Patrik Laine trade, the Wild have emerged as a possible destination for the sniper, who has requested a trade, of course, from Columbus. Now, we get a couple more interesting parts here, saying the Wild would need to clear plenty of salary to fit the 26-year-old on the roster, as the club has just $1.5 million in cap space available. Laine's contract has 2 years remaining, with an average annual value of $8.7 million. But then goes on to say that Don Waddell said he's not interested in retaining half of Laine's salary. When Waddell spoke to the Columbus Dispatch, he said, "We might end up having to eat some money. If I wanted to eat half, though, I could have traded him by now, and that's not my first choice." So I guess for any of you guys hoping that they were going to get Laine down to $4.3 million, that doesn't seem to be the case. But at the same time, I think it's pretty likely that around $2 million or so is what the Blue Jackets have to settle on. I think they have to retain some bit of salary on this deal to make it work. I think it would be impossible to trade Laine without that. So I think we will see some salary retention, but maybe not as much as some people want. Still, though, if that's the case and he goes down to $6.7 million, I think for a lot of teams still it's not as manageable. But I think as a player, Laine around $6.7 million, I think is pretty fair. I think you can make the case that he's pretty overpaid right now because of the inconsistencies and the injury troubles there. But I think at $6.7 million, it's a lot more easily digestible, especially for that shorter term. Now, for me personally, Minnesota was always a weird one to hear about. I feel like they could use some more star power, and that's been something that's been well documented. But I think Laine is kind of the opposite of what they've grown their brand to be, really over the course of their entire history. Especially recently, they've tried to go for as hardworking, as responsible as possible, and Laine is pretty much the opposite of that. Even though I think the potential of Laine is still pretty high, especially the goal scoring and offense there, he is most likely going to be this rover that defensively you cannot trust, and I feel like Minnesota is just not the type of team to be interested in players like that. Now, if we're talking about a Patrik Laine in a Minnesota deal, to me, there would have to be some heavy cap dumps going the other way. But to me, it would have to center around Filip Gustavsson and Freddie Gaudreau, who combined to about $5.85 million in cap. And you, of course, have Minnesota there at $1 million already. So if they were to trade those two players, they'd have about $6.85 million in cap space. And if they're going to retain, if Columbus is going to retain $2 million on Patrik Laine's deal, that would be 6.7. So they would just barely be able to fit under the cap floor, at least with what I'm proposing here. Just barely. It's just enough to make it happen, at least if Columbus is willing to retain $2 million. And I think these are honestly two guys that Columbus would be pretty heavily into. Filip Gustavsson is somebody that had a great 2023, took a little bit of a step back this last year, but I think does still have potential there. And Freddie Gaudreau is somebody that Dean Evason, of course, with Columbus now as the new head coach there, absolutely adored in his time with Minnesota. So I think he's somebody that you would love to have in that bottom six, and somebody that can work hard, that can play well, is not going to show too much flash, but with that cap hit, could be a serviceable bottom six piece. The problem is, I think Filip Gustavsson is a player that honestly Minnesota wouldn't want to get rid of at this stage, and it might be a little bit of a problem, at least goaltending-wise there. Maybe Jesper Wallstedt is able to come in behind Fleury and be a solid player already, but it's a pretty big risk to take, and I'm not sure Minnesota wants to do that. And I feel like especially if Columbus is going to get a player like Filip Gustavsson, that there's not going to be too many other prospects or picks involved. Honestly, Gustavsson would be the big part of that deal and would be the major value piece going back to Columbus. So maybe they have to trade a Daniil Tarasov or some other goaltender to Minnesota to make it work. I'm not too sure, but there would be a lot of weird ways this trade would have to go to actually make it work, especially under the cap right now. And again, it is still surprising to me that Minnesota of all teams is going to be in on a player like Patrik Laine, but apparently Bill Guerin has interest and is trying to reach out to him personally, which does mean that Minnesota wants to make this deal happen. Now we're going to get into the other two teams that will be on a Patrik Laine, but first I want to talk about today's sponsor in BetUS. Now we've looked at the NHL awards odds on BetUS over the past week or so with the Hart and the Calder, but the Rocket Richard was interesting. I was looking to see if Patrik Laine was actually on this list at all, and of course he is not, but I'm just saying, plus 6,000, Cole Caulfield, I'm just saying. But if you guys want to make your own picks on the NHL awards, on the Stanley Cup winner for next season, go in the description down below and sign up to BetUS. You'll get an 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 with excellent customer service, the best payouts in the industry. And especially with this next NHL season starting up quick, BetUS is the place to be. Now let's talk about the two other frontrunners for the Patrik Laine sweepstakes. And of course, we have the initial tweet talking about Minnesota. We talked about the Wild being a potential option here, but the two other teams are apparently the Montreal Canadiens and the Buffalo Sabres. Now let's first talk about Buffalo, because this is absolutely wild to me. I really did not expect the Sabres of all teams to be in a Laine, because even though I think they could add some more offense, it is a heavy risk for a team that already has some pretty big holes defensively. To me, I thought that was going to be the big thing they tackled this offseason, but it's going to be largely the same next year. I think they're really hoping for bounce backs in Owen Power and, of course, more health in cases like Matthias Samuelsson to really boost that defense. But adding more offense in the way of Laine is certainly enticing. I think it was a kind of underrated story last year, especially with how dynamic this Sabres offense was in 2023, that a lot of guys ended up taking steps back, like Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins, guys like Jack Quinn as well with the health issues they had. The offense was actually one of the biggest weaknesses for them last year. Now, in being fair, Buffalo's actually one of the few teams out there that could bring on Laine for no salary retention. They're 6th in the league in terms of cap space right now, with $9.374 million to work with. And I still don't think that Buffalo would take on Laine's full contract. I think there still would be some salary retained, but they're one of the few teams that has the option to take on that full contract. And I feel like unlike what Minnesota was able to offer, this is a deal that'll be a lot more pick focused. But I do think the main player that will be going back is Jordan Greenway. Of course, somebody that with experience under Dean Evason as well, playing in Minnesota. He's somebody that could be interesting there in Columbus. Of course, we know what he can do physically on a bottom six. He can be a decent player. And this last year got 28 points in 67 games. Again, not much more than a cap casualty for Buffalo. But I think it makes sense that Columbus would want to have somebody coming back. Greenway fits the cap structure there, and I think there is a possibility that Buffalo maybe gets rid of Greenway's contract, maybe takes the full contract of Laine, or at least maybe less than $2 million, maybe just $1 million retained there, or something like that. I could see that being a possibility here for Buffalo, and they're one of the few teams, again, that could stomach it. Now, Buffalo is one of the few teams out there that can actually give up a massive amount of picks if they truly needed to. They have all their picks within the first 7 rounds of the next 3 seasons. They haven't traded any of them. So if they needed to have a bunch of quantity to Columbus, they have the option to do so. A lot of that would depend on if there is any salary retention. If there wasn't, then obviously Buffalo wouldn't have to give up nearly as much. But I do think if maybe there's maybe $1 million, maybe $2 million, maybe Jordan Greenway and a second could end up making sense. I think it would be more like in 2026 or something like that. But I feel like Columbus would be in a position where they could get a bottom 6 player that they wanted, get rid of that cap space. It would, again, depend on the salary retention here. But again, Buffalo has the options to do anything they want here. So really then all comes back to the team fit and whether or not Buffalo is actually going to want to add somebody of the one-dimensional talent of Patrik Laine. If they want to have and focus on that goal scoring and acquiring talent here, if they really want that, if they are believing in Patrik Laine's help going forward, then I could see it being a situation that could work out with them. I mean, they have the center group to really solidify him with Tage Thompson and Cousins, and those 2 guys could be really interesting play drivers to put alongside Laine. I think especially Cousins could be really good alongside him, but I think Buffalo would take a massive risk there. But I think honestly now is the time to be taking risks. If you're going to trade Greenway to second, then honestly it's not that big of a risk for Buffalo. They already have a ton of picks. They already have a ton of prospects in Greenway. I don't think it was going to be a massive part of that team. You get rid of some depth, but there's the potential to get a big player here in Laine. And I think in Buffalo's case, they're absolutely one of the teams here to get him at his lowest and potentially get the most out of him. The big thing though that could hold this trade back from happening is actually Patrik Laine's contract. He doesn't just have the $8.7 million deal. He also has a 10-team no trade list, and there's a pretty good chance that Buffalo is one of those teams. But I do think there is an opportunity here for Columbus to say, hey, I mean, Buffalo might be the only chance that you have to get out of here and actually go to a different team. And if that's the case, I could see a situation where Patrik Laine waives his no move and just goes to Buffalo in the end. We know that Laine has requested a trade. He wants out of Columbus. He wants out of that situation. And there could be the case we made that Buffalo's a lot more ready for the playoffs, which is something that is kind of crazy to think about. But especially in Laine's case, if it's the only option out there, I could see an opportunity here where he does actually say yes to it. But now we go into the last team mentioned here as front runners for Patrik Laine. Of course, you know we were going to talk about it. It is the Montreal Canadiens. Now, this really isn't too much of a surprise. It feels like from day one when Laine was out there in rumors that the Montreal Canadiens were one of the teams out there that we knew were going to have some interest. Now, here's the thing for me. Before the 2024 draft, I would have told you that I think Montreal needed another game breaker, another big goal scorer, another big pace pusher. But I feel like this 2024 draft did a great job in alleviating some of those concerns. Obviously, Graviteh is the big one, but you also get Michael Hage, who can kind of be a borderline middle 6, maybe even second line piece. He could be a center. He could play wing. I think both of that versatility is almost a reason why Montreal took him in the first place, but I think you will be fine even if you don't trade for Laine. If you do, though, the riches in the top 9 are going to be unbelievable. I mean, you're going to have someone like a Doc or a Hage or a Newhook on the wings, and you could have Patrik Laine on the first line, the second line, you could have him on the power play. To me, in the last calendar year, if they go for Laine and they actually trade for him, that top 6 would go from some concerns to, I mean, as good as you could really hope for it to be. Now, of course, that is assuming a lot. That's assuming that the Habs could actually trade for Laine in the end, and he'll be a healthy, solid piece offensively. I don't think he's going to be pushing play, but goal scoring wise, he is going to be a fantastic player, and honestly might put a little bit less pressure on Cole Caulfield to be the only true goal scorer on the team. That could be a benefit for both players. But I just look at what Montreal needs in the future, what they could really use in the future, and even though I think Patrik Laine could be a great offensive piece, I'm just not even sure that's what Montreal needs now in the future. I think they got their guys now in Graviteh and Caulfield and Slafkovsky, and even in lower cases like Doc and Suzuki and Hage. You got a lot of offensive pieces there. To me, if they were going to go for anybody, I would have kind of liked maybe a middle 6 power forward, older type who could be a little more of a veteran, somebody that can really introduce these guys into how to play the game correctly, how to get consistent results. And that's something that I think Montreal could really use. A two-way balanced player that brings stability within the lineup. I think Laine could bring great goal scoring, but I honestly think in the future when players like Graviteh and Caulfield are in their primes, Slafkovsky are in their primes, I don't think the goal scoring is going to be too much of an issue. I think defensively they could really bring somebody in who provides balance and stability throughout that lineup, and Laine, of course, is not going to be bringing that. But I can absolutely see the vision of what Montreal is looking for here in a player like Laine, getting him at his lowest and getting a potential 40 goal scorer in the future, really pushing that power play to new heights, which I think would be the biggest benefit of getting Laine in the end. But I feel like in terms of team structure, in terms of what they need, even though Laine would be a ton of fun, I'm not sure it's a need right now for this Habs squad. Now, in terms of players going back to Columbus, to me, the two most likely options are Christian Dvorak and Yoel Armia. In Dvorak's case, I think he's a little bit less likely because of his natural center position. Columbus is in a position where I think they want to give players like Fantilli and Sillinger center responsibilities, and Dvorak might cut into that time, though he could be on the wing, and maybe that's something that Columbus wants to bring him in as. He's somebody with a good reputation, even if the health has not been there over the past few years. I think Armia, though, is a lot more likely, considering his rental at $3.4 million. He's big, he can score goals, and especially this last year was a really underrated player for the Habs. 17 goals, 25 points in 66 games. He's somebody that I think Columbus could really appreciate on that bottom six, and with that limited time, he's shown to put up some pretty good results. Now, for the Habs, they have quite a bit of picks to work with. What I think the trade could look like is Laine maybe with $1 million, $1.5 million retained on his contract for Yoel Armia, and potentially that Pittsburgh second rounder. That, to me, I think is the most likely. Maybe that Pittsburgh second rounder and a later pick, like a 6th or a 7th. That, to me, I think could be pretty equal value, especially to what Buffalo would be offering in that deal. But I would let them know down below what you guys think of that trade, especially for Montreal. Would you do it? Would you do it for that price? Do you think it's too much? Do you think it's too little? Do you think it's a risk you're willing to take bringing on Laine to the team? There's so many intangibles here, so many different parts to the Laine deal, and that's kind of why I like discussing it so much. There are so many possibilities here, but of course, we now know that Montreal, Buffalo, Minnesota are all in on him. But that's going to be it for today, guys. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, comment down below all your thoughts, and share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Make sure you, of course, click on this card for all the trade rumor content in one playlist right there. And of course, thank you to our sponsor today, InBetUS. Sign up with the description link down below, and we'll see you in the next one. I hope you have a fantastic hockey day, and goodbye.